So let's start with refuge and bodhicitta. Sorry, Mandala offering. Sa shi ju shi me ram re ram le shi me de gen ba Sangye Shindo Mite Uwa Yiroku Namda Shinla Chupa Shoidang Guru Ratna Mandala
Mandala Sangye Chedon Soji Chonam La Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyabsun Chi Dagi Chushi Gipon Zedaki Drolam Benji Sangye Drupara Sho Sangye Chedon Soji Chonam La Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyabsun Chi Dagi Chushi Gipon Zedaki Drolam Benji Sangye Drupara Sho Sangye Chedon Soji Chonong La Chanju Bardu Dani Kyabsun Chi Dagi Chishi Gipon Zada Drolam Benji Sangye Drupara Sho Kanki Tuzi Nizone Tawa Tamche Pambi Chere Tambi Chun Denze Kodam Kela Changse Lo Good morning, everyone.
Also, the cover go to the not nine dump and also to the Sazan de Kariming.
Yengazi Lan Tamba di Tonga Galamandrayas. And the Tigant Niba Yanal Dambala Nasejda. King in Chanjo Lam to Joa. Sichikin Yamalan Din Temba. Lojong Yitse, Lojong Tamsi, Lojong loves at Tembasi.
Okay.
Samaloya and Dangan Zuta Zanimak Homsin Gotsuganza. And somebody use, somebody mambu use.
So greetings, everyone. We're gonna come back to the Sunday morning teachings, which is something that is happening regularly in our spiritual program. So on the Sunday morning teaching, we've been looking at mind training teaching. So welcome, everyone. Greetings.
Ani tadu stay on the tamisawa res ni stoch yon de use ton de di ani kechi di ani sawa solaya mingni zidat shayo wenza ani nge zo nanchu ngore de devi toni chi ani tandabadu to shu de wins ra.
So looking at mind training on this Sunday morning teaching, Geshe is combining that together with an introduction to Buddhism. For often we get new faces in the audience during the weekend, during Sunday. So Geshe reckons that it's good to include some introduction, at least for someone that is you might say a beginner or someone that is new to the Buddhist tradition, someone that wants to find out some things. So this is really important. So we're combining both teachings on mind trainings, but also some introduction to Buddhism.
어디래 딘자 지당기 낭추 슬라온디 낭추 에게 낭추 코랑기 옹저라스 다 낭추 코랑 카리메 ngote 직 데니 낭추 ngote 다 낭추 냠슬렌 당 remba니 다 디용고도 아스로 다 디용고레스.
And as such, when we look at Buddhism, there are two essential points. First of a certain introduction to what the essence or what the nature of Buddhism is, and then the stages of putting it into practice.
데레다 낭추 ngote 온디 낭추 기 시사디 시뎀바니세 시뎀바니 안 뎀바니 이지친 뎀바식 어디 다조 디시뎀바니 드레샤스 다 시뎀바니 슬라온디 간주치 간주타치 통대야 아니 퇴대야 고대야 소르대야게 직추 간다징 바이네야 여바 간다징 바이네야 코란리야 아니 직 간줄래야 난술 찍다 유 코란기 내술 찍기 차니지 다 무유 내술래야 디어레스 진짜 디실샤네 아니 조고엔자 디 딩몬트야다 베 계신보다 계체슈디
So then, as for providing some introduction to Buddhism, the very basis that we work with is the foundation of the two truths. And when we look at the two truths in more details, when we break them down, we can look at the presentation of the four truths. So we begin with the basis, the two truths. And here we're looking at whatever we hear, whatever we see, whatever we feel with our body consciousness, whatever we taste, whatever we smell, all those different phenomena have those two modes, the way that they appear to us and the way that they exist. So the two truths pertain to that, the mode of appearance and the mode of existence.
데레 디자 베나당 아주 연구라스라 아주게 나원난신치기 휴코랑기 닐루레야 여대바진 바이나 아니 상엔다 아니 다닝기 교드로야 메데바치 인고로스 데딩안주 데링 비길이야 아니 녜인 바이나야 산이 달은준정이지 가즈기 녜인 바이나야 데링 달을 큐딩이지 가지 드라이 마가스지 마이들이 아니 가사 차대야디 나만신 유코랑 내술래야 아니 매버티 판타로디 아니 두수 돈이다 땡고여라스라 땡고레스라.
So then when we investigate how things appear to us and how they exist in an actual sense, we say that had things existed in a way that they appear to us, in that they appear to us as being negative or positive, good or bad, friends appear to us or enemies appear to us, and they appear to us in a particular way. Had they existed in a way that they appear to us, it would have meant that there would be no possibility for them to change, which means that there would be no avenue for changing from bad to good and so forth. But we know that, for example, when we look at someone that is your friend today, they might have been your enemy yesterday, or someone that has been your friend yesterday might be an enemy of yours today. Someone that you liked yesterday becomes someone that you dislike today, or an enemy of you today. So we see those types of transformation from negative to positive, from positive to negatives, from friends to enemies, and vice versa. All of them are evidences or proofs for things not existing in the way that they appear to us.
어디래 더 딘지 돈다 아니 네술이야 네술디다 뎀바생디 유코랑 네술디 아니 뎀비차드레스 난술디야 메뎀비차스라운 따간지 민레야 아니 아 나와 콘즈기 뎀바타 네술 아니 된담비 뎀바세 아니 뎀바니디 다 디니 실샤니 디니 실샤비토니 아니 samudandanga rinpochiki samudandanga rinpochiki ngore tingi shilashanda samudandanga rinpotiliya ta lam tabshi nyi seti di yungu dos.
So then when we think of how things exist, the mode of existence, this is reality. And that reality is called truth. The way that they appear to us is not true, right? So the mode of existence, the way that it exists is real, this is a truth. But the way that they appear to us is untrue. So we use certain terminologies. Appearances, those things which are untrue, are called conventional truths. Whereas what is real, the mode of existence, is an ultimate truth. So these are the two truths which form the basis within the Buddhist philosophy. So we think of these two, how things exist and how do they appear to us. These are the two truths. Then as we think about them, we put into practice the two types of paths. There are the paths of method and the paths of wisdom.
그래베나 수술을 나오는 신직 더 인샤샤 제제네 아니 차단게 돼야지 안 디왕기 된다 아니 단년 파마송기 이와 용돼야지 디왕기 마기와 용돼야지 로 디왕기 동안 용돼야지 니츠 텔야 시네 아니 다 닌지기야디 닌지기야다 조 탑기 아니 탑의 셔럽니스는 게 탑세드 아니 조 디렌도스로 딘디질이야 탑세고레스 디 아카다 아니 비기다지 뭔가 미시비 왕기다 아니 축되기 요래 삼성치 로 라지 난 참말로 란더전 시안 참말로 아니 딘디기 나만 신지 셴비 왕기 몸비 왕기 아니 다 차단기 아니 동안용 되게 내주 텔야 세니 아니 닌지기에지 용거한테 디 탑이 차들이스 당 우에 내출이야 나만 난신 매버티 벤담비 닐루시비 로들이야 셔럽스 더 딩이 딩디기 셔럽 딩이 뭐디 아니 즉 송든 될지네 로토바이나 안 내급이나 기부 아니 타두기나야 저보다 군이 세야지 아니 탑 텔덴 탑 아니 람 탑신이를 때니 아니 제복군이 세야지 간지 아니 상기 공방 아니 군조 공방티 비기다 직 군조 세야지 랑 대와자 많이 봐 심장 탐치기 직 감다 매버신도 봐 아니 시그니 펜도 제퉁인기 랍싱이 깨부 차야 돼 아니 탑 아니 람 탑신이를 때니 용구요레스 어디다 남아 상기 비추고다 모두 인디로디 딘디지토는 로고도 스라
So while there's a discrepancy between the way that things exist and the way that they appear to us, we actually assume that things exist as they appear. We make the assumption that things do exist in the way that they appear to us, and on that basis, we develop attachment to some and aversion to others. We make such distinctions between friends, enemies, and strangers. And when such determinations are made, such distinctions are made between friends, enemies, and strangers motivated by anger, attachment, and so forth, our mind is made unhappy. And we experience suffering, we experience problems. So when we see how things work, when we assume that things do exist in the way that they appear, and because of that, anger and attachment arise, and because of that, we make such distinctions between friends and enemies and strangers, and we end up experiencing suffering, not only ourselves, but also other living beings. On that basis, we develop compassion to others. So compassion belongs to the method side, right? So this is a part of method. We recognize this process of that ends up in suffering that we go through, that others go through, and we think, alas, this assumption that things do exist in the way that they appear results in all that unsought suffering. So this is the method side. On that basis, we develop compassion towards those who grasp it, phenomena existing in a way that they appear to us, and thereby becoming angry or touched and so forth. That's the method side. Now, with the wisdom side, we come to see that things do not exist in the way that they appear to us. So on the basis of seeing or understanding the discrepancy between the mode of existence and the mode of appearance, we develop wisdom. And if we combine these two sides, or two aspects, the aspect of method and the aspect of wisdom, then on a temporary level, we can develop happiness and well-being. But on an ultimate level, finally, that will lead us to the attainment of the state of Buddhahood, to the attainment of the two resultant bodies of a Buddha. Which means that through this combination of method and wisdom, not only we can be led to the state of liberation, but finally we can also attain the state of a Buddha, the state of omniscience, where we'll be able to see the different disposition, to realize the different dispositions of different beings, different people, and thereby be able to be of most benefit to them. So in order to attain that state, we follow this path that integrates method and wisdom. This is, you might say, what the essence of Buddhism is.
아니 레균데 쯔송체야 아니 개왕아실이야 이치체야 테니지 냠타비 심진라야 닌지고메티 단 난추 냠네스는 디레샤스 난추 냠네 체다마지세디 안 딘디지 톨라야 단 종고도스 다 두조파 샤니 직단 된번데야 쳐버피야 다지 가르 비 남규 가르지 땜바이바이네야 난추게 냠레야 로고요 요마레스라 요마레스.
And then in terms of Buddhist practice, in a Buddhist practice, we go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, which are called the three jewels. So for us, they constitute the sources of refuge, the three jewels. Well, we develop trust in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. We develop faith in them. And through having a sense of faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we also consider as much as we can how karma works, actions that produce results. We also then behave in a way that is underpinned by our trust in the existence of past and future lifetimes. And in our Buddhist practice, we try to be of most benefit to sentient beings that are in a pitiable situation. So this is what we do in our Buddhist practice. So you might see those you could say tokens of practices of Buddhist practitioners, like making offerings or making prayers, doing some recitations and so forth. And you might think that this is what Buddhist practice is. This is how Buddhists practice. They make offerings and they recite prayers and they do different recitations. But actually, this is not the essence of Buddhist practice. The actual Buddhist practice would be the things that we've mentioned before. Would be first off to go for refuge to the three jewels on the basis of trust and faith, to whatever we do to act in a way that is considering karma, to be of benefit as much as we can to those that are in a pitiable situation. That would be a Buddhist practice.
아니 야 군졸라야 대바지야 레균데 지송지야 개왕아지 켈레야 냠타비 숨진다 아니 닌지고메 티디 다 땅아주 장고야 디레샤스라 다 장고야 디레샤스 다디 장발야 디 장발야 다 남비 난슈 둥원천 좀된디 추 가르치 땐도 추 가르땐도 추디 디라 디야부 징원트바이나 테니 란다 신 참말로 다 미시 몽비왕기 아니 착당기 샤만디 큐르니 동감 문드신도 동ar그네라야 혼데지 라트야지 요사리스 다디 라트바이나 테니 셈띵니 아니 콘졸라야 대바당 아니 렌데 레 랑기 레사는 데브 랑기 뇽고연 통디 아니 레 메게라야 domba 라 아니 딘디 나멘디 केवन दे समासे अनि केवन केव गुन न्योंगो याजी या राचोंदी अनि केव छिमल या समतानी अनि छेन देलया अनि छि अनि खर्सो ताजी दोमसम टेम्बल सोबा अनि छि मिगी चुपोयला सोबा ओ दिन्डी गे समलोदी अनि ngang legyo sares ngang legyo sa ta dindi jiyo yala ta janggo ya ngazu janggo ya dire do sarwa
which means that through having faith in the three objects of refuge, through considering karma, which means knowing that the actions that we take produce results and therefore behaving in a way that accords with how karma works. Doing that on the basis of past and future lifetimes, in trusting that it exists, and in developing compassion to sentient beings that are in a pitiable situation. This is what we need to train it. And for that, we need to develop an understanding of the teachings that the Buddha gave. What did the Buddha teach? On the basis of understanding what the Buddha taught, we come to see that oneself and other sentient beings are shrouded by the ignorance of unknowingness. And because of unknowingness, not understanding, anger and attachment arise. And they lead to the performance of certain actions that result in suffering. So this is the type of understanding that we want to draw from the teachings of the Buddha. So then when we do that, we look at the way that we behave, and we understand that since our actions produce result, we develop a sense of restraint. Not only we develop a sense of restraint when we understand the way that karma works, but also in considering past and future lifetimes, in understanding that we will go from this lifetime to the next, and there would be one after that, and so forth, so that we're going through a succession of lifetimes. We start to think of what will occur to us in future lifetimes, and for that end, we might take up ethical discipline of restraint, which means that we're taking up vows, like the three levels of vows, and we guard them as much as we can. So this is what we take up in our Buddhist practices. We train, right? This is what our Buddhist training constitutes of.
nanzuda nangchula ya juni nangchula lobjong che nangju nyamlin chi kabdula ya ta donlin che gosa pe mambuda yongro asra nanzu pe na ta chin digi togu tamsong che do ani lega che onde te donlin che gosa pe mambu yongro asra kali kya gosa pe yongro ta ani kyo tengyun do ma dribi che do lega che onde teli kyang ani donlen che gosa ta mambu shu yungro asra lusam nigi tone kali kya gosa pe mambu yungures yungore ta yungro asra.
So we study Buddhism, what Buddha taught. We put it into practice, and that involves with our Buddhist practice is involved with taking up some things and casting aside other things. And we can see that we often do it with respect to affairs that belong to this life. And that in order to secure some happiness or well-being in this life, when we get involved with pursuit or concern for food and clothing and social interactions and so forth, there are many things that we take up and other things that we stop doing, that we cast aside in order to secure that. Those things that belong to this lifetime. So also when we think of what will occur to us in future lifetimes, even more so, there are things that we need to take up and things that we need to cast aside. So we work hard, we strive at developing the things that would be of use for us in future lifetimes.
Rediko chungi reshas ro kansana chumji chingi ledun chevalaya kaling eberti kya kondas ra kale kyapsla di lusam ke pe ani ta donlen chin kanga khari yobana ya tuzu khed sechi an donlen chin rogo echi ra anzu pen ta chik tsin di gi chet tsin di gi togu tamsong ta chik penjo gi chedu ani zinsu tembi lega chevalaya lobjong chego das lobjong chego kabdalaya ani kale mambu gyago korasra ta lobjong ten sani ya tanda jongder la soba ta mambu roso mambu tangoya ani dindipe mambu yunga ta del dene dine ta chik lo chodang kashi chilaya ani penjo chinch soya ta dindi yungo korasra ta duzuga tamate ani tsama shaan drogo ejimado 아니 소소조이 모델이야 각게 매주치는 조고야 내서 들이 차고 여버디 쟁긴 쟁길이야 아주 뒤sol이야 동네 치기야 드나신기 아니 추 로존 치온디 드나신기 동네 치나 동네 치토 봐나 동네 가주 치토 뒤쪽이 아니 춤지 야가식 등구야자다 동네 치당 람바디 칸데스 치고레스 나온 딱 켄진 남가 벨게 내가 로존님이었어 삼티네 맞다 로고레스라.
This is the natural way that things work, right? So in order to issue forth a result that is meaningful, we often need to work hard, right? For a result that does have a meaning, we need to put hard work into securing that, and we might work both physically and mentally hard in order to make that happen. So through understanding what it takes in order to produce such a meaningful result, we undertake it, we take it on. We see that we do it with affairs that belong to this life. Like, for example, if you think that, well, I need to become wealthy in this life, or I need to make sure that I have enough money for a certain thing that you have in mind, then you think that, well, first off, I need to train it doing something. I need to study, right? So you pay money for a certain course or for your training. Sometimes it costs quite a bit of money, and the trainings are not easy, or whatever you study is not simple, and that takes a few years. And when you complete that and you join the workforce, you undergo further trainings, and also you put money or resources into those trainings, and you get certain qualifications, and you work for you might work in that field for a few decades, amassing money or possession, wealth, or what have you. But then at the end of your life, when you move on from this lifetime to the next, everything will be left behind, and none of it would be joining you on your transference from this lifetime to the next. All of those things will be left behind. So then, in thinking of what will occur to us in future lifetimes, we start to think of, what then do I need to do, and what do I need not to do? In that sense, what do I need to take up, and what do I need to cast aside that will be of benefit for me in my future lifetimes? How do I do it? So in that vein, Nam Kapil, in his mind training like the rays of the sun, the text that we've been studying for the last few weeks, is explaining what we need to do and what we ought not to do, what we need to take up and what we need to cast aside in relation to that.
Terida dichendi ta je lojong nimiwesers ra lojong slaundi so di 아니 어다 딘디지 최체와야 인지미 로종 가신 제거를 해야지. 그러 먼저에 릉아 있으면이 아니 르우톤의 최 가진 제여 말 나그톤의 가시지 조 망체슈들이야 로종 쓸다고 해야지. 근생 카레스. 그러 근생 카레스 딘디 상무지 땅와이네야. 내가 진도하스라.
So this text is called mind trainings, like the rays of the sun. So it begins with calling it mind trainings. So in our Dharma practice, we train our mind. You might wonder, why are we emphasizing the mental training? Why is it not physical training or verbal training? Why is it that this particular training is mental training, mind transformation or mind training? So when you think about it, there is a particular, when you think of the reason for it being a mental training, there's some reason that you can pull out from that is useful.
데르다 균생 카르레스 라운디 조 데레스다 조 데르다 nganzu dewa dyugyo re dungan dyugyo marwas inza dyugyi dewa yakshu di temshu di lojong toni yongo ores mundu yu dunga diang seya diang lojong toni sevgo ores dunga yonya diang loy toni yongo yanza samlu toni yongo yanza ani lojong godu seti ku nenga tatuba lo semle ya tugo yanza ani lojong tita chug nimbo di lojong imba di tel tugo resro.
And the reason for that is that we are seeking happiness and well-being, and we do not wish for suffering. And the best type of happiness, the most stable type of happiness that we can develop will come from training a mind in cultivating that mental happiness and well-being. And also, if we want to put a stop to suffering, we also need to undergo certain training. So happiness and well-being will come through undertaking certain training. And this is the essence that we take out, that we extract from this set of teachings of mind training.
Dinama dan disungo dan dinama lo shagin sta kadu dinro niba di yana dambala ngas kandele ya ani da simjan tamjila yemi ninji ki gores ninji ti tobki ani laksam set da jik simjan tamjil dunga da tana chimaro nyamba di ninji deres da dunga da trawa de dagi che nyamba de laksam res da dagi che wala ya 단다 제위 니바 메반자 니바데 뎀바디 상기라 여반자 니 심전 탐지 대위 살아야 고비체도 딩 괴퉁인게 다 상기 공반디 마토노 탑문도 디 토벌 치기 냠바디 토벌 차오 냠바디 아니 잔주고 샘생이들이스 다 딘디기 샘디 키야라야 안디 양나라 가르고레스라운다 아니 양랑아티 디 양나 담발랑아세디 데니 용고요레스.
So then picking up from the next point in Kenshin Namkapel's text, Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun, we are going to look now at the section that explains instructions concerning the 5 precepts that are factors of the trainings. So just to contextualize this 5-point section, which constitute branches of our training. So we develop compassion for sentient beings. We need to develop compassion for sentient beings, and then having developed compassion to others, we develop the wholehearted resolve, the highest intention, which means that first off, we develop the wish, may sentient beings be free from suffering. And then on that basis, we develop the wholehearted resolve in which we think, I will liberate sentient beings from suffering. And then when we think of our ability to do so, we recognize that currently we don't have the ability to free sentient beings from suffering. The only way that we'd be able to do that would be to attain the state of Buddhahood. If I were to become a Buddha, I will have the ability to liberate others from suffering. And therefore, we think for the sake of setting other sentient beings in a state of happiness and well-being, I will become a Buddha. So this state of mind is called bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So in order to develop the mind of enlightenment, we need those 5 branches that Namkapel explains in this section of instructions concerning the 5 precepts that are factors of the trainings.
어데레 데자 지다 닌지당 찬주고 샘데야 원트제 안 디톨라야 가주 성당 투바이나 안 수술로디 비기타지 고양을 줘야지 개체를 줘야지 라 부스타고 매봐 지 된다 춘준지 만디바이나야 lamsampi semleya pon ani makiba danchi chadiyati tende nyon yores tinza an duzu tolaya ani tusam shegwa ta pe kechimbo ro pendo chimbo insares.
So then through introducing a mind to compassion and bodhicitta, through thinking about them, our mind becomes more vast. It becomes broader. It becomes more spacious, more relaxed, and it loses that sense of tightness. It does not become uptight. Often we say that trivial things bother us, and when trivial or simple things bother us, our mind tends to react to that in becoming uptight. So the development of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, reduces that tightness of the mind.
Di dambalangas kengi chanju lam tu gyurwa. Sichigi nyamne dini temba lojongi se lojongi tamsik lojongi labja temba was.
The instructions concerning the 5 precepts that are factors of the trainings consist of 5 sections. So for the people that are using the printed book, what page are we in the book? 81, thank you. So there are 5 sections: transforming adverse circumstances into the path, the integrated practice of a single lifetime, the measure of having trained the mind, the commitments of mind training, and the precepts of mind trainings. If you want to have a copy of the book, do we have the stash of copies of the book? Is it at the back of the gompa? All right. Thank you.
Terda tambulanis kengen chanchu lam tu gyurwa. Dor tempa te jeba sheba.
So first off, we're going to look at transforming adverse circumstances into the path. Now, transforming adverse circumstances has 2 parts. Thanks, Elizabeth. So the 2 parts are the brief and elaborate explanation.
Terda nuchu digbi kuvitse kengen chanchu lam tu gyur. She song this. Tandinma re nuki jigde migi chu dangre shundun doshen. Chugi simjin samgi nyumu le me chagyu lenge soba le meji. Ti gyunzenji nacho la gawi lalun jombo non tudub geni chiri chuje yongla nutse ma. Kyabar du tigjingi chugu shugba namla gon hatso ni gengir zimbi kamdir chundinra shigi gorshu ni gagin tungin di keshi parchu kesu keshi nöshi kyan gewishi ni di keshi bi goni komna gengin chanchu tribi choksu chardi gewishi ni jangawi shani shabu wala kelo jong wala gengin choksu shar dunga dewa nyuwa ngotsar shi sombataros.
So we begin with a brief explanation of the way to take adverse circumstances into the path. And in so doing, Nankapa first of all refers to the root text for mind training like the rays of the sun. So mind training like the rays of the sun is a commentary to another mind training text, which is called 7-point mind training. So in the 7-point mind training, it says, when the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, transform adverse circumstances into the path of enlightenment. Now, the brief explanation says the environment is filled with circumstantial results of the 10 unwholesome actions, and the sentient beings who inhabit it think of nothing but disturbing emotions and do nothing but unwholesome deeds. For these reasons, the gods, nagas, and hungry spirits who favor such black actions are invigorated and increase in their power and strength. As a result, spiritual practitioners in general are troubled by many interferences, and those who have entered the door of the vehicle are beset by various adverse factors. Under such circumstances, if you engage in this kind of practice and are able to transform hostile influences into conducive factors to see the opponents as supporters and harmful elements as spiritual friends, you will be able to use adverse conditions as supporting factors in the achievement of enlightenment. In this context, Geshe Changawa said to Geshe Shapawa, "It is amazing that your disciples of mind trainings take support from adverse factors and experience sufferings as happiness."
Tirda dinanglaya dan nöda juset nöse dan jigdingi kamlaya nöda jungi sun bigoras nösena danganzu chik sochak nesagi ani yulonglaya nöse gores telayas ta chik sajumelon jonshiki li tribigi ani chik bigi ta chik sari ani churi mere ani longla soba o didi da tribigi da ani kanjim rerawala soba 디디어로스 다 델라 템비게 아니 소차트 네 데고라스로.
Here, Namkapa refers to the environment and the beings within that environment. The terms that are used for that in Buddhist language are quite technical. So the environment is called the container, and the sentient beings are called those which are contained, or the essence within that container. So the environment refers to this worldly realm, which is made of, you can say, consists of the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, and wind, right? So this is quite easy to see. So we have mountains and forests and such, being, you can say, consisting of the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. We can see that. And then there are those beings that depend upon this environment, this container.
테리 덴자다 주기 아니 뇌라야 디비 쿠비 다 당레스나 간다지레스 라운디 당안주 베게다 단 잠블링 기베 잠블링 코라 아니 참직 잠을 내여버디다 나주 통고라서 요 사말로 아니 잠블링 기다직 아니 추쪽바 차드야 롱쪽바 차드야 아니 차드치르드야로 소바 아니 출로 용야 아니 사임 용야 로디 아니 찌당기 그 좀히기 피게 인거데네 겐초디 아니 미 피게 다지 아니 되셔셔다 때문에 소지 아니 덩엄다 로 착발라 소바 아니 셰당라 소베 토니 아니 간 잠블리나레 타만디 마 치시디 펜나 네염이 바야냐 아니 미 쇠비게 네염다 아니 까마도버디 인거라서 나서 마음부 쇼지 단당한 잠을리 영이 미 룰이야 나서 마음부 슈트맹에 나서 마음부지 아니 미 수비 나서 임바스 어두 삼 간지 아니 디비게 아니 당제생이들이스 로 아니 비게 아니 롬보코란 쪼버 찬줘야 돼 아니 디비게 당제레스 어 딘디즈고레스 티조레스 로
Dr.
당제 dakpyudeune chilagda.
Okay. So then with respect to the environment here, Khenchen Namkapa refers to the environment is filled with circumstantial results of the 10 unwholesome actions and so forth, which means that you can say that the environment itself is filled with negativity. So how do we explain that, how that came to be? So then when we look at this world, when we look at how this world came to be in a way that it is at the moment, so we can see that in certain parts of the world, sources of water are polluted, the air is polluted. We are beset by sickness, plagues or pandemics and so forth. And of course, you can say that these things are related to the elements, right? So if water is polluted, if sources of water are polluted, or if the air or wind is polluted, you can say that that, of course, has to do with the elements. But many of those things came to be because of our behavior, which is based on afflictive states of mind, such as attachment, or passion, aggression, and so forth. We as human beings, we create many of those circumstantial conditions that bring about those negative aspects in our environment, even so far as you can say that creating some forms of disease even some of them transmittable diseases that at the end turn to be unwholesome conditions in the environment that we live in.
Reda odunti reda ra penangege that siu temperature ya anzu lo tru dun kala ya ani anzu lomba la ya shina lo gata mambu to yoge ani shindon pe mambu yores ra pe mambu warda anzu ani shindon wala ya ani meta ani pe khalas ani kanju tudo tanga di shindon wala degor kan gyamna wala ya kan yung mare 차왔다나 원래야 티바ják 말고 아니 싱글로마기 초판슬 추키로 그랬어. 근데 나로 줍시 정하니 아니 고츠니 아니 아이다 미 자나니야 용니 미 아니 가드이나 님마 딱봐 아니 신동 건데 그랬어. 니마 지레 양간주 나니 바 갑두다서 리딩 원 신동 건이 강기 미지 신동 건 오고 미지레 jan 세서로 만중고스 통스 들으 진짜 신동 거는 가지고 신동 거 이 미기 롱비 쇼는 마 추첨부 주어 추나유디 이 야르카 추첨부 차라 아니 몇 마키로다 딘디 깐진 단단 간주 롱발 신동 배신 통해 매겨로시 아니 신동 통해요 말이 강은 통해요 말이 추강가 쪼바 차다리 딘디 차다시스 론 유시 숨주 나로야 딘디 기베 아니 삽침부 차요레스 디 먼저 너무 집은 말했다. 가사칼 딘디 용거를 도저 참을로 가르치 동감다 어 딘디 토니 용다 아니 먼저다 직된 감거라 창직 뢰 니수 딘디 차로 걸었어 다배 사강라야 아니 지 신나도 슈 지온디 딘 마메기 아니 야낭 사절이야 다 로따고 줄로 죽대디 아니 체리버도 딘디 레스 리강 신지온디 아니 추말로 용거레스 추주투고 말레스 아니 출로 주고레스 딘디라고 알아다 다 댄상 양 신축주 리강이야 메강갈이야 아니 자마단 신축주고라 딘디 치고다 간지 주주 축사로 왔다라
Geshe remembers that when he was growing up in Tibet. So Geshe was born in eastern Tibet in an area called Kham, that was the region, or more specifically in Litang. So he remembers when he was 6 or 7 years old, he used to go out from the pasture grounds and into the forest. So all the area was covered with forest. Some of them were thick forest, and the trees were ancient trees. So they were hundreds of years old in those ancient forests. And they used to sometimes in the summertime have sort of picnics under a tree. So, you would light a fire, and then people come together to sing together and dance together. So it was kind of big kind of social gathering in those forests. And the forest was sometimes so thick, and the branches and the leaves were so kind of ancient, and they covered a wide area. So if it snowed during the winter and you took shelter under a tree, then you wouldn't be affected by snow. Or in the summertime, if it rained, then you would stay dry because the forest was so thick. But then when Geshe was about 14 or 15 years old, people from China started to come every year and cut down those ancient forests. And Geshe remembers one occasion where there was some people working at the top of a mountain, cutting down trees, and the trees just rolled down and killed someone standing kind of at the foothill. Anyway, the method, there were also rivers. There was a river system in the place that Geshe comes from. So they used to cut down those trees and push them to the river, in knowing that when the summertime came and the river would have a strong flow, then those trees would wash downstream and made their way to China. So that was the method of deforestation in Tibet. So within a span of a few years, then there were no trees left at all. And now the land is standing barren. So no trees. Also, it used to be kind of the mountains around used to be snow mountains, and the peaks used to be covered with snow. So there is less and less snow, and sometimes there is no snow at all. The river system is polluted. So all of this is driven by a sense of attachment and not being able to find any type of satisfaction, which also brings about a lot of problems, not only in Tibet, but all around the world. There are similar situations where forests have been cut down, then changing the environment. For example, there are every year massive floods in China, and part of it is related to the river system that starts in Tibet, right? So flowing down from the Tibetan plateau into China with the cutting down of trees and forest, the land lost its ability to absorb water. So then every year when there's rain coming down, and of course now there's also climate change, there are massive floods that occur in China. So now with that understanding, then China is using forced labor in order to force people then to replant some of those forests. Anyway, such things happen because of afflictive states of mind, anger, no satisfaction, and so forth.
아니 잠블린디 톨 네비 따직 소자 요도 졸이야 아니 펜 마토나다 네 마기바친 줘야디 다 키치슈 테레스로 마도 셴기 가르쳐 봐야냐 먼저 셴이야 아니 마자 두 마리 두바자 두 마리 까두 마리 바종 무상로 딩교단 두 마리스로 다 수수응원이 강용 지용치 수수응원이 따진 잠블린이야 손집 제투야기 니버지 여나 아니 삼루톤 땅고야지 디마도 셴부 가면 매반자 아니 삼로디 아니 로종고도 세디 로존이 아니 잠블린 코란이야 비 아니 제비 삼바 안 잠블린 디나 네비 소차라야 제비 삼바 여나 아니 녜섬 글로디 용기요 말레스 뇌섬 글로디 용기요 말레스 뇌섬 글로디 매바이나다 다 시디기 자와 디라스로 어딘자 아니 남산지위 추조디 생토는 로고야디 딘디지 인사레스로.
So I should have said it occurs because attachment and lack of satisfaction. So then when we look at the world and all the living beings in that world, from Buddhist perspective, we develop the practice of non-harmfulness. We wish to not harm them. If we become adversarial with others, we fight with them, if we oppose them and so forth, and thinking that we can force them to change the way that we think, we're not going to be able to do it with everyone. So rather than adopting such a harmful approach, then the type of behavior or practice that we take up is in thinking that my goal is to protect others, and training in developing a sense of protection, protecting others. And that is based on love and concern for others. So our practice is based on love and concern for others rather than harming them, rather than having the intention to harm others. And if we develop that intention to be protective of others, motivated by a sense of love and concern in avoiding harming others, that brings about a sense of peace and well-being to one's mind.
Terda ro di junzinji nashola gabi lalun jombo non tudogini chir chuje yongla nözema seadi manzu lorgyu ton debayna ya tagaran chongde doasra ane tandi negabl debayna penata tindi tan nasho penata chig lalogi ane tudogi yondi ane chig zamblina ya chig shededa ane dindigi labse gyavdengi dindigi gyongyong chedengi duzula mixig dangbu chig doasra penata 아니 다왕이마들이야 벽이 창고 종세서들이야 전부 tumbi 왕부 건자 피트 구스 코섬 제마치 아니 콘즈 또리레스 아니 콘탄숑 또르샤스라
롱파카레
창고 피트 구스 코섬 얘기 템비 구스 다 디기 원이 진짜 가연 누구가 말다스 메시지 대바체서지레 만 디기 아니 찹식레 누구요 말에 마망기 데둘레 누구요 말에 마망기 샘공래야 대바트야지 마도 콘다 디기 네치 부성요 말이냐 콘주 또르고다스 또리어레스 딘자 테르다 딘디인 거 다이냐 당한주 다 인지 공유하러 왔다. 인지 공유하러 왔다.
It says the environment is filled with the circumstantial result of the 10 unwholesome actions, and the sentient beings who inhabit it think of nothing but disturbing emotions and do nothing but unwholesome deeds. So then, in thinking of how when the environment becomes so negative with such environmental result, and also beings in those environments are prone to be to inflict harm upon each other, and then environment and beings within that become so negative, it seems that the powers of good, or those on the good side, are becoming more restricted. Like, for example, Geshe said that in a place which is not that far from where Geshe grew up, in an area called Chango in eastern Tibet, there was a big statue, 83 feet tall statue of the Buddha. Recently, Chinese forces came in and took it down. So Geshe think of how, kind of, particularly in this point in time when the world is kind of filled with kind of this negative actions, kind of there's such kind of damage to the environment, it seems that actually the powers of goods are becoming more restricted. And thinking about a statue like that, it is not harmful. It brings about a sense of peace to the people around, and yet others feel the need to kind of come down and take it, to come over and take it down. So such examples, Geshe feels, can be found around the world, with how even more so in times like this, it seems that it's even harder for some positive forces to act.
들다디 베주부 말에다 아니 베 아니 취직이 될이야 늦었다 아 갸르 로기나 대바이나 다 망부슈 총 벤 단단 가주다 디네 셰데야게 추 종군디 야가 파비율 좀 된디 우치비 다 아니 야가기 기비가 못되다기단 제로스 또 콘주기 비 야가기 아니 펜루 속다 지 롬니 체사기 때니 베기다 지 나나다리 도지데나 소바 아니 갑투디 가주스기다 야부여리 이나야 아니 간지 나쇼키 아니 할룬 좀부 토드게니 아니 토르샨도 왔어요. 맨날 도지된기 초den로 무치디 드럽 찍니지그리라 옆에 사고라야 배샤고야지 로 사고라네 아니 치수야 템비 로기 두zu 모여내서 딘디여러서 먼저 담보 용디게 지동 거기 캡든 캡길에 용디게 도지된기 초된기 타니 단답에 dob자야 어디서 그 사로 도르레지 사ponj 딘디
직동
곱게 제시캡든 캡길에 사야 ponj 그 타듯 어디 터치스 아니 초된디 사원의 주 아니 때르스 딘디시 두 야지야다마 인사레스로 간지 딘디 총어스다 간지.
And such things not only occurred in Tibet, but also occurred in different places around the world. Like, for example, when you look at Indian history, we here not only follow the teachings of the Buddha, but also we follow the teachings of the Indian masters, great masters that have arose in India through the passage of time. So one famous monastic institution that existed once upon a time in India is called the Nalanda Monastery. So the Nalanda Monastery was completely destroyed at some point in time, many centuries ago. Also, Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha attained the state of enlightenment, also became completely destroyed. And there's the complex of the big stupa that was not only destroyed, but was lying underground. You can say it was covered with ground and was lying in ruin for so many centuries, and was excavated just starting from the previous century. So when we think of forces that brought to the world so many positive things, at the end got destroyed by kind of negative factors. So Geshe remembers that when he made his way to India, from Tibet to India in around 19 87, visiting Bodh Gaya, then for those of you who are familiar with the site of the big stupa at Bodh Gaya, the surrounding was still underground, right? So work was still kind of going, they were still excavating certain relics. Some things were still covered by ground, dirt, and so forth. So such destruction, again, was brought by negative forces.
어디리다 어디인자 다 두수 참아 가르레스 견자 쪼드 가르레스 온디 안주 미게 샘 감키피다 지 아니 잠제다 딘지기 만담이 왕키 아니 차단 슈치비 왕키 아니 총샤와 임바디 야샤야담 바리스 딘자 안주 미 샘공라야다 잠지 중국도 세디 무유 네츠기 데기기 자와디 잠제를 두고야자 아니 잠지 중국도 로종국도 세 견센데레도 아스라.
So such things happen because we as people don't have enough love and affection to one another. Not only we don't have enough love and affection to one another, we have too much anger and attachment. They're too strong. And therefore, what we do need to do is to cultivate love and concern for others, love and affection to others. And that will bring us happiness and well-being.
이라다 딘장 안주기 샘나월이야 직다 수수기 아니 차츠사 초법규사 율 아니 직 덤비군녀레 아니 쳇녀레 곰바레 아니 직 자준레 가르 또 잠바이나야 샘나월이야 다직 착당 모성기 샤만도 큐바레 니제 삼성기 삼로지 여바나 아니 수수 샘 만투야 로 아니 수수 샘 만투야 펜도도 용거라 디마도 아니 갑디자니 델야 돈렌치니 아니 네버치가 들어봐야나 아니 둘 드레지마도 야 드레지 학돈도 따축 수수 샘투 아니 수수 뉴몽기 샤만도 쇼 아니 랭에 바사 아니 수수 강송을 드레 규차드원자 디 지기문도스 로 지기문도스 수수 로장고도 세 인디송고도 아스라.
So then when we think of such places where people used to do the spiritual practice, do prostrations, make offerings, to build statues and stupas, monasteries and so forth, then those places got destroyed. Well, they got destroyed because people's mind were controlled by anger and attachment. So when we think about it, rather than becoming adversarial, we develop a sense of compassion for those that under the forces of anger and attachment and so forth brought such destruction upon others. So if we develop compassion in this way, rather than becoming angry, our mind will not become that disturbed. If our mind does become disturbed and becomes adversarial, in that it wants to pick up a fight, it wants to resist, it wants to fight and so forth, and that will only make a situation escalate, go from bad to worse. So we consider a reaction to things like that. So rather than, if we react rather than with compassion, if we react to such situations with a mind that is completely disturbed, a mind that is controlled by anger and attachment, and we act upon that, we create actions, those actions which become negative through the force of anger, attachment, and so forth. These actions will lead us to miserable states of rebirth in future lifetimes.
아니 남바산지 위치 딘티기 띵사부 여버디 지 곰바다 상망베게 아니 tor샤르다 이네야 아니 최디 샤존데 파 다르치니다 지 아니 야나리 페리 가사칼야다 최 띵사부 슈치 나 야가파부일 여벌리 샤가도 다르와스 다페 나로야 최 딘티기 띵사부 지비 카둘라 아니 피다 지 아니 라로게 토니 네세용치니 Sami shuj combo tonta truk dun and it travel the summa boom yamiji and 세 정강의 주 총열되냐 디니츠 요니 양제 자갈이야 아니 겨울음지 우치비 넘버 산지 위치디 슈 타리오레스 디네바 진단은 잠블리야 타드레치 차고레스랑 미 슈갸바이나 아니 그 가주스기 낸섬 짠 또르바이나야 아니 샘디 트룩투에 메바인자 아니 다야치 딘자 나는서 슈갸바이나 그 자야유치 딘디 인사레스
The way that karma works sometimes is a little bit strange when you think about it. Actions produce effects. So when we think of the passage of time and the evolution of Buddhism around the world, so starting off in India, and Buddhism in India became such a deep-rooted tradition, and yet at some point in time, it was completely destroyed. But Buddhism at that point in time has traveled to other places around Southeast Asia, to China, other countries, also to Tibet, and took firm root in places like Tibet, to the point in which when the Chinese occupation came into Tibet, there were 6,000 or 7,000 monasteries in Tibet. Hundreds of thousands of Tibetans were involved in monasteries as monks and nuns. Again, that was completely destroyed, but some of them made it to India under the guidance of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, restoring, building monasteries, restoring their spiritual programs. And then now those teachings make the way to other places around the world, like, for example, to here. So then when you think about how such a process is possible, even though there is such mass destruction that is brought on Buddhism at different point in time, at different places, Geshe feels that it is possible when some people's mind are not being disturbed, right? So if you face such a situation where your mind does not become too disturbed with anger and hatred and so forth, then there is a way for Buddhism to continue. There's a way for Buddhism to still preserve and kind of still, you can say, take place in places where there is less adversarial, less conflict happening.
That long of just such a conlaya, and it's begin on dingy, that's chug denny, and a gombatan, and a tavatsuma, some issues surdania, tea jelaya, that long of jelaya, that losum jishujinalaya. Zambali Nalayata, and non-judit caviars, how than the pin Australia in pigin on thing chuzota, and sumji shivchini mantal dosra. The Kadichonre, Pigilia, Pelaya, and it's combatant, and it tower the Zuma, the Nutse Tamal Denny, and Zambali like cabarosro. Kedzit in the Chomevana, and Saja Kuyojlia, Tanda, when Australia dojin by Peshi, and it non-sugar. And that's some Yamavachin, Hayoyaki, Yanga Yoros, Tanda to start to Yadia, quick king angel at Denny, Yonza, king and lump care to Vana, or Dindichita, Yungudosera, and Missozoya, Tinanshing, king and lump care to Vana, Missozota, Yagidrachik, Dindi Yungusares.
So then just thinking about it in general, 50 years ago, there were long up just gonna lot dunchus.
Chiktongo young of Chungab King of Gura.
The Gana the Shipshe Gul Lola level.
Yeah.
Just a lot chukchus.
Okay.
So about 60 years ago, there were, Tibet was teeming with monks and nuns and so forth. And then in a short span of time, all of it was gone. So then there were those that managed to leave Tibet, and then when you look at, for example, a situation here in Australia, as Buddhism made its way from Tibet to India, and then from India to other places around the world, well, now we have about 30 or 40 Buddhist centers here in Australia. So when Buddhism was destroyed in Tibet, we here have the ability to enjoy the Buddha Dharma. So then Geshe feels that if you think about it, if you think about an alternative reality where such thing would not have happened, let's say that China would not have come into Tibet or that distraction would not have taken place, it might be that we would not even have the ability to hear about Tibetan Buddhism. Maybe we would not have even had the words and the terms that we now use within Tibetan Buddhism. Anyway, Geshe is mentioning that because here we're looking at transforming adverse circumstances into the conditions which are conducive. So rather than reacting to a certain situation with a mind that is disturbed, and thereby a mind that is controlled by anger, aversion, and so forth, we can take on a certain adverse circumstance and with a sense of compassion transform that into something that is of benefit to other sentient beings.
기두기 랭이디 가두이네 연구여레스 기두 랭이 용이 갑들이야 즉 샘도 쉬우지기 아니 개바 만로야 로 기부 전에 쉬우지 가고야다 누구 전에 쉬우지 로범 제거야 딘디게 요 말에서 그 뉴비란 신진자 그 가리네 연구레스 근데 강 투바틀이야 강 제바틀이야 디게 토니 소졸이야 가서다 gomdu jortuwa lojong nyamnele ketuwa china da yabu yore sungorda tela kantu gomdu jor she sonde re.
So looking at the next part in this section that explains how to take adverse conditions onto the path, it says the elaborate explanation has two parts: taking adverse circumstances into the path of enlightenment by relying on the special thought of the awakening mind, and by relying on the excellent practices of accumulation and purification. So first off, taking adverse circumstances into the path by relying on special thought of the awakening mind. The text says again, that's 7-point mind training, apply meditation immediately at every opportunity, which means that we do go through different periods in which we experience good things or negative things, good or bad, happiness or suffering. Here it says, whatever you encounter, apply to your meditation.
Detawe donga todo baba tomayo te tamji gi donga gi ko dagin di chobo kyuni te tamji donga malwe ba tawar kyuji donga lembi gwani ninji kombi ten ta drupdi chong le nyamdu samba tabani gashi rambar chawos ta chona dindi chik samdango gres.
We take lightly every mental or physical difficulty that befalls us, be it great, moderate, or slight. Whatever the circumstances, in happy times or hard times, whether we are at home or in a foreign country, in a village or a monastery, in the company of humans or non-human friends. We should think of many kinds of sentient beings in the boundless universe afflicted with similar troubles and make prayers that our own sufferings may serve as substitute for theirs, and that they may be parted from all misery. Considering how wonderful it is to have fulfilled the purpose of our practice of compassion by taking on the suffering of others, we should sincerely rejoice.
Jor nangi ken rangi lusum neji tubi wangi lori ki medewa me rangi tesola chola kodrongi tsi chir sangi ki temba ingmar kyu tungenban ditawi kapsu tikjin ki chudribin ka yengi enshi chinangin tungen lebar zomban ditawo sonum gotomani sabin dribu yemba kor macha nyamdu ngebar chedi chema penjegin ditawi 푸숨 소바 파마체바는 종이 귤 수름 넘버 답이 시치비 초소비 골람 베버 차오스
When we enjoy happiness and prosperity and suffer no lack of food, clothing, dwelling, friends, or spiritual masters, but possess these external conditions in abundance, and when suffering no internal problems such as sudden discomfort caused by mental or physical sickness, we are able to put our faith and so on into practice. We should recognize that all these favorable conditions are following an uninterrupted great vehicle practice. In these hard times, when the teachings is degenerating, are the fruit of merits accumulated in the past. Therefore, it is essential to endeavor to accumulate merits on the basis of pure ethics so as to obtain such uninterrupted prosperity in future lives.
대달 마이난 가시라 종세 푼송 조비치 나길당 약바당 제바기비 켄드로 망시 류숨기 땐도 동어 종세 종위치 쉼신 이치 소시 길루비 켄도 소마 대달 마차와 kinna kikya dona dunkawachi gu sombandas.
Those who cannot see the point of this due to the having obtained even a little wealth are in many cases governed by pride, arrogance, and disdain. When they encounter even the slightest mental or physical trouble, they become discouraged, despondent, and defeatists. We are taught not to behave like this, but to be undisturbed whether we encounter happiness or suffering. Now, Geshe is wondering if you have any questions.
Yeah.
Sandy? Hmm. 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 All right. So Geshe mentioned environmental distractions. So then when you think of environmental destruction at this point in time, particularly climate change, then you feel helpless, so not necessarily hopeless, but helpless. So there is not the sense of anger that arises in the mind, but a sense of like, you feel discouraged, you don't know what to do, kind of sad. So what would Geshe suggest for that? Dila kran kori chola doya ditola kran kamuchi sumba. Chezan ditola sanotawaina tandangansu zambulingi namshi di gyo jogerwa. Namshi gyo joya di ditola sanotawaina tadi kran kancheva dila dende shuk meba dende pentok chembo jematoba ta soso sem shuma da ochi chagirwa sem des choba chade sem choba chade contract chamade nene des sem shumba cha ranshu meba des kyolang chiklagirwa ligirwa chizan kabdila kran samna samlo kanechi tangores karechi.
Tadinro English ro kansna danganzu ken kandachi lebayana ya ken di zawa karime di tole samdang ko yati bekhishin bu isares ro ganzu changji kari chongbayana ya gyukin kalden chungyo ba dangan zambilin gi kuyu chola drayare zambilin le ya chago chembu yong ya samlo danji shiwa nanshin gi kanji chamze ga mandangwa chagdang monsum shukchetan 용구여버 야시야다 말했다 잠재 만당디 다치 잠재래야 른당지지 잠재 냠는 제 딜을 하가지 탑시 여서 말했어. 딜을 하가지 로 랑다 시간 참을로야 펜도 여버디 잠지가 돌아 상당히 로 단딩이 투사 말 땅인 중은 딱 그냥 즉 소소리에 니버미기 돌아 상당히 되나 마기바다 심부 만드로면 딜 펜도 문도 왔어.
Whatever condition we encounter, it's good to think of what is the root of that situation. What is the source or the root of that situation? It's important to think about it. What are the causes and conditions that contributed to that situation, particularly as you mentioned, climate change and environmental destruction? So what is the root problem? What is the root cause for this situation? Well, Geshe feels that one way of looking at that is to recognize that this environmental destruction being brought on because a lack of concern and love for others. Because rather than having an adequate sense of love and concern for others, people are governed by anger, attachment, and such. This is the root of climate change. This is the source for that. A lack of sense of affection for others and a strong degree of anger, attachment, and so forth. So then when you think about it, when you think about that being the root cause, then Geshe feels that if then you think that therefore the way for me to deal with it in my mind is to develop love and affection to others, then I can use that and I can use myself to be of benefit in whatever way I can to oneself and others. So if you just think of there's nothing that I can do about it, there's nothing in my power to do anything about it, indeed your mind becomes quite discouraged and you lose spiral or you lose momentum. But if you Geshe feels that if you work on training the mind in developing a sense of concern for others, affection for others, there's something that you can do that also prevents the mind from becoming so discouraged.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's do some dedication prayers. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all sentient beings without exception into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Shinrezi Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Savior of the snowland teachings and transmigrated beings makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion. To Lotus Holder Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You uphold the Sibyul's moral way, who serves and bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Several of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. Dila.